Welcome to Beyond the Numbers, the podcast where conversations about wealth go deeper. This isn't about flashy success or one-size-fits-all advice. It's about real people designing financial lives that align with who they are, what they value, and the legacies they're building. We bring together voices from business, finance, law, and leadership to talk about the moments that shape them and the strategies that sustain them. Here is your host, Chris Everett.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Beyond the Numbers, where money meets meaning and purpose. Today's guest has an extraordinary story that begins in a low-income household where pro-wing shoes marked your economic status and your zip code often determined your opportunities. But instead of letting circumstances define him, he found his voice in the most unlikely places, screaming for a punk rock band that toured nationally and secured record deals with labels in Japan and Australia. What followed was a winding journey through recovery, graphic design school, toxic work environments, and eventually to his current role as a brand expert. Most importantly, he's someone who has turned authenticity into both an art form and a business strategy, which is so close to my heart. So get ready. You're going to hear from this creative, punk rock, self-described weirdo who's going to challenge everything you think that you know about branding, career success, and living authentically. So I recommend silencing all distractions. You'll want to catch every bit of wisdom from someone who truly practices what he preaches. So everyone, please meet my special guest, Randall Witte. Welcome to Beyond the Numbers, Randall.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate you having me. This is amazing just to be here. So
I'm just so excited. You're more than welcome. So let's just talk about, you mentioned, because we've talked obviously before, that in punk rock, all your debits became credits. Your pain and your struggles actually gave you street cred. So how did that early experience of being valued for exactly who you are, how did that shape your approach in business and branding today?
I appreciate the question because it's one of those things that sometimes is weird to talk about. I came from a household that was very much of its time. Parents raised kids in a certain way, and I don't even necessarily think this had a lot to do with my upbringing, but I always felt like I was uniquely not designed to be in the world. I always felt like I was outside of my class. I always felt like I was a little bit of the weirdo all the time. I never really felt comfortable in my own skin. And when I found punk rock, and this was back in the 80s, I was essentially a child, 11, 12 years old. And there was a lot of cassettes going around my neighborhood of just crazy music, right? So I ended up getting some of these cassettes and it was punk rock music. And it felt so accessible because the music wasn't like music on the radio. It was raw, it was unhinged, it was screaming. And when I found that there was actually a punk rock scene in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, I engaged it to find out that the ideals of the scene and how much I felt like for the first time in my life, for me outside, I felt really embraced by a scene of people that, my debits became credits there. It was my struggles in life as a kid, being a weirdo, all that stuff it was really embraced. And I found a lot of mentors in that scene from people that to be frank, our society would not consider mentors. These were, let's be real, they were criminals. They were people that were in and out of prison. They were not living their lives in a way that most people would think is successful, but they had a lot of wisdom and they had a lot of love for a kid like me to be better. Yeah. And so punk rock for me it really has defined it and continues to define my life.
Yeah. I think a lot of times when life occurs for us, good, bad, or ugly, we can end up in places that are just not normal. Everybody likes normal. Yeah. Except for you and I, of course.
Correct.
So you shared some profound advice from an older gentleman in recovery, right? He said, take your gifts be of service to others, work 12, 14, 16 hours a day on what you love, and then the money will eventually come. That's pretty counter to most career advice, right? Especially if a parent is talking to a child, they were like, oh my God, become a doctor, a lawyer, whatever. So can you walk us through how you applied this philosophy and just what actually happened when you actually lived it?
And I was one of those people that I think most people would have said, hey, Randall, he's a low bar guy. He's not going to college. He's not going to do any of that stuff. And when I got into this punk rock scene and I played in bands and stuff, and I ended up being addicted to drugs and alcohol. And I found myself in recovery at late 20 when I was 26 years old. And I met a gentleman and I was like, okay, I know I should probably go to college because that's what people are supposed to do. I definitely didn't want to work the labor jobs that I had previously worked because my brain in being sober was so overactive. And so I thought if I could put this brain to use doing something more creative, maybe I could find a little bit more purpose in life. So there was a gentleman that just said, Randall, you find something you love, get good at it, give it to people as a gift. And then because you love it, you're going to work at it 14, 18 hours a day, and you're going to bet the very best you can be at it and just be of service to others. And eventually the money will come. Because I had asked him, do I just go to school for something that makes me a ton of money, make a bunch of money, and then do what I want to do? Or how do I do this? And that was the advice that he gave me. So and that's exactly what I did. I just applied to art school. I applied to Columbia College in Chicago. I got in. I very quickly found out I could not afford art school. I wanted to be an illustration major. And so I pivoted to graphic design because I thought that seems not necessarily lateral at the time, but for me, it was the best thing because it really did allow me to explore type and image. And essentially, when I decided to make this decision, there was a lot of people, especially me being in early sobriety. You can only imagine the life you live in addiction. Yep, friends, family. Okay, you're going to do what now? And how are you going to make money doing that? There was a lot of second guessing. Rightfully, I hadn't had a track record of a whole lot of follow through at that time, but I decided that no, this is going to be I'm going to follow through on this. I'm going to do it. I love it. I'm going to do it all the time. I'm just going to implement that. And that's all I'm going to do is I'm not going to have an expectation. And I think maybe if I had more of an expectation, I maybe would be further along career-wise, success-wise. But for me, I had to eliminate that idea of expectation because one, I was in recovery. And two, I didn't need more letdowns. So I really did take that guy's advice to heart and I did implement it. And it was a long road. Even my story is littered with people saying, you're not going to be able to do that. I remember I had college professors telling me, you will never work in graphic design. It just made me want to do it more.
Yeah.
You will never be able to design records for money. You'll never be able to do that. And I already was doing that in college. So I had a lot of adversity, but I think that adversity really did fuel me because of this punk rock background I had. I just always thought you guys have no idea where I come from. You have no idea what I've been through. If I can get through that, I can definitely get through this. So I did apply and didn't have an expectation for money.
It's funny. A couple of thoughts I'm having. I'm picturing you in the band screaming because that was your position. You were a screamer.
It sure was. Yeah.
And you had told me you didn't really need any talent for that.
Absolutely not.
But it was so freeing, right?
It really was. And it was raw. And it was, I could tell there was something empowering to me about telling a group of people about my ideas. And I think if there's one thread that goes through everything that I've done since I was 11, 12 years old, it's been that, where I really always latched onto this concept of vocalizing and visualizing ideas and concepts, especially less popular ones. For me, it's more fun to be a little bit of offensive it gets people's attention. And I wasn't trying to be offensive. It's just a little bit of who I am because of very early in sobriety, I realized I had to be who I was. I wasn't going to be allowed to be anybody else because one, I'm a terrible actor. Two, I got to stay sober, which means that you can't be lying to people all the time about who you are and what you're up to. So I was just tried to keep myself as authentic and honest at all times as I possibly could be.
You remind me, the second thing that you reminded me of, because you're absolutely right, that authenticity piece is vital. So sometimes when clients who have kids that they're trying to launch into college, as an example, come through, I know I'm talking to people that love their kids. All right.
Yeah.
And the only thing they want is for them to be somewhere in life where they know they're going to fit, they're in the right spot, but they're going to flourish, right? Because you want to see success out of your kids. So that's why so many parents are doing it the wrong way, saying, go do this, go do that, but it's not the right fit, right? It's that fit that really matters. So you identified that for yourself just intrinsically, and then you had to work it out through some pain. But honey, you made it happen. You're amazing. I can't wait for people to hear all this other stuff. So look, you ended up getting an offer for a job in Flagstaff. And they were offering you 6 figures, and you turned it down. You were making $50,000 at the time, paying $450 a month rent, living, you say you were living the dream. Okay. Now, most people would think you're wacky, crazy. What do you mean you're living the dream? You're living in a $450 a month apartment. What was really going through your mind? And how did that decision lead to something better?
This is how that kind of went. Now, authenticity doesn't often lend itself to practical business. And I'm not even going to pretend like it's all the time mentally healthy. But for me, I was doing this thing where I was driving to work every day. At this point in time, I'd been doing graphic design for 14, 15 years. Okay. And I had never gotten a position that really went beyond that initial. There were sometimes I'd be senior graphic designer. I never became creative director up to that point. And I really felt in my career that I was stuck. And I always felt like I have better ideas than people are allowing me to express and fully realize and fully conceptualize in my work. So I would do all that stuff in my own time. And then I'd go to my job where I got paid to flesh out somebody else's ideas. Mm-hmm. So this was frustrating to me. So at one point I'm driving to work in my Saturn Vue, my 2007 Saturn Vue. And I just said, hey, universe, God, whatever that is, if there is something for me in this career, if there's something bigger that I should be engaged in, just tell me. I'm an idiot. Just let me know what that thing is, even if it's just a whisper, an idea, whatever it is, just give me a sign here. And I'd been doing that to and from work every day. A little bit of manifestation. It was pretty unorthodox because I really wouldn't even turn my music all the way off. I just turn it down a little bit. I do my little verbalization, the manifestation. I crank the music back up. And about a month later, I got a job offer just out of the blue from a company I used to work for. And he said, Randall, I really need you to be a creative director, the thing I always wanted. I'll pay you $100,000 a year if you come out here in the next 30 days and essentially run my company. He said, my company's in trouble, and I feel like you are uniquely qualified just because I had worked in that system before. And it was a very unorthodox system for an advertising agency. Mm. So I said, okay, give me a couple of days. I'll call you back and I'll let you know. And as I was driving home, I audited my life. And I thought, I pay $450 a month rent. I make $50,000 a year. I go to punk rock shows 5 out of 7 nights a week. I have friends. I'm playing in a hardcore band. The more I thought about it, the more I felt like it was a no-brainer not to take the job. And so that's how I deduced that. And it really, and people would call me crazy, but I think people's definition of success is warped. I think a lot of people, like you were just saying about parents sending their kids to college, a lot of people have these ideas that if I can just make my kids like me, but the better version, that's successful. But the truth is, to make your kids the best version of themselves becomes a success, exactly. Not to make them a model of yourself. I was really thinking on those guys. I was like, man, I do have it made. I'm going to keep playing in this hardcore band and do my dead end job. I had resigned to the fact that, okay, it's a dead end job, but I got hardcore, I got punk rock, I got a obscenely cheap apartment. My life is pretty good. And so I turned the job down based on that. And so I called up the guy that offered me the position and I said, I'm going to turn this thing down. I'm sorry, I've never been offered this much money before, but at the same time, I have it too good. And he actually got a little bit mad and said, I really didn't expect this. I don't know what I'm going to do now. And I said, and I specifically remember saying, do not counter your own offer. It's a waste of time. I'm not going to take this position. And he said, okay. And then that happened. I felt pretty good about it until I was driving home that night. And I thought, universe, the thing I was manifesting, right? Did I just turn down the thing that I manifested? And so I went through this it sounds pretty psychotic, but for me, it was like, man, did I just turn on the thing that I actually created for myself? So I said, universe, if that was what it was supposed to be, if that was the sign, have it come back. I told him not to come back with a counter offer. And sure enough, a month later, he countered his own offer. And then I was like, okay, universe, I appreciate your patience.
Yeah, it's not psychotic. It's actually human. We only can see in part. So that's what happens.
I couldn't get myself to that point of, I cannot standardize my success by definition of everybody else.
Right.
If I'm going to live as I am and think as I do, which is different, which is oftentimes unconventional, I just couldn't look at it like that. Yeah. I couldn't look at it like 9 out of 10 people would probably take this, or maybe even 10 out of 10. I just couldn't get there because for me, life is about life.
So you got there. You ended up taking the job at even much higher than he originally offered.
Yep.
Just talk about it. You said it was toxic and terrible, but you stayed to fulfill your commitment. But how did you balance that staying true to your values while honoring your personal commitments, especially when the money was good, right? But the environment was poison.
It was difficult. And I almost immediately recognized that job was just not going to be for me. It was very combative. It was a high volume ad agency where we probably turned out 110 projects a day. It was a high volume. And it's not like every project would be completed, but it was about 110 emails being corresponded. We would intake anywhere from 20 to 30 projects a day, where I would then filter those through and having to creative direct all that. And it was very much never anything I wanted to do. It was definitely not creative. It was designed by number in all of the automotive brands, from Porsche to Honda to Toyota. It really was never anything I wanted to do. But I did quickly realize that, hey, this is not what you'd ever want to do. But also you did make a promise and you made a commitment to, at the very least, you can help this guy save his business and set up that position of person who runs everything to be easier, more of a plug and play for the next person. I was probably working there just a few months when I'd come to the thorough and finite realization that I had to quit. But I couldn't do it until I finished the job. And so I began implementing, taking things off of my plate and cycling them to different people and getting that position to a point where you could plug almost anybody in there and they would be successful.
I hope that there are some people listening who have relatives who've been through the punk rock scene and just never really got it, and can hear that authenticity, right, is just key, but also honoring your commitments, your character, your credibility speaks volumes to who you are. That's pretty cool. Most companies talk about authentic branding, but you actually live it, right? So yeah. And I know personally, so when you're working with financial advisors who might be more naturally conservative or traditional in their thinking, and I don't even know how people do that, but anyway, how do you help them understand why being genuinely themselves is actually the best business strategy ever? Because, and it's okay to tell the truth on me, because I pushed back on you too, and you were like, no, you have got to do you.
It's a great question, because, and you did push back on me, and it is a great question. Because, and I don't think this is unique to financial advisors. I think most business owners, small business owners, even large, huge corporate conglomerates, they overlook the value of the brand. And obviously this word is thrown around so much where it's, oh, the brand, I am my own brand. And people say crazy things like that. And So my barrier, obviously, to talk to a financial advisor about how I believe that most brands definitely in the financial service sector I'm just going to say it, are wrong. I think most financial advisors prefer to look like huge corporate conglomerates, even though they have a staff of less than 10 people. They prefer to be competing with the larger corporations in the space because they think that's how they should look. And I
we're
don't
taught that's the mentality. Yeah.
And it's the entire industry. So if everybody in the industry is telling you something, and then all of a sudden weirdo punk rock Randall comes along and says, I don't agree with that, it's difficult to say, okay, Randall, let's do what you want to do. So what I had to come up with was a method to speak to the value that was different. Most people cannot vet their own brand. So the first thing I had to come up with was a means to vet the brand you have. And this all came to me very intuitively. A lot of the reason it became intuitively is because I have a background in professional wrestling. And professional wrestling is very basic storytelling, and a lot of it has no dialogue. So I pulled all that stuff from my professional wrestling background and said, what questions do we need to answer about the financial advisor to really optimize their brand? And I don't believe that an advisory should look like a huge corporate conglomerate. I think Chris Everett's financial advisory should look more like Chris Everett than a financial advisory. I believe that about all financial advisors, because when I looked at the space, I realized most financial advisors don't do different things, especially in the independent space. Now, when you're dealing with a huge corporate conglomerate, you could win that blind taste test every single day of the week. But if you go mano a mano with another independent financial advisor, now it's going to be about who the client likes better. And I think that's how people make their decisions on who to do business with in that space, is who they like better, because who they like better is probably who they trust more.
Okay, so yeah. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
you're good.
When you are me, it's important that I like you too, that I want to work with you. And interjecting that in my practice, of course, I've done it for years now, but that was a scary thing to do. But it has paid such huge dividends, because when you're working with people that you really know you can help, it's not work. It just becomes such a joy. And they feel it too. Yeah.
And I think that's that authenticity. And I actually, when you and I first met, I feel like we hit it off right away, because I'm not going to speak for you here, Chris, but I feel like in that space we were both in, we both felt like weirdos, and then we're like, hey, let's talk. And then I was like, oh, let's hang out the majority of the night and just talk about stories and branding. And you are charismatic. And I think most people, like my former self, sell themselves short. In this space, it's not easy for a financial advisor to see their attributes and their credits like I was able to be shown to me by the punk rock scene, and later a mentor that really pulled it out of me. And let's be real, that was only in the last 5 years that this mentor really showed me my own success. So between pro wrestling and this mentor showing me my success, I had a formula to get it to show advisors how to vet their own branding. And it was.
Go ahead.
You want me to hit it, or you want to?
No, hit it.
It was, who are you as a human being? How do you see yourself? What are your core ideals? What struggles have you overcome in your life? Like my alcoholism and drug abuse. Poverty, right, is always a great one. And why are you in this business outside of financial motive? And tell these stories, and don't give me just the greatest hits. I want to tell the entire story and not pull it back out. Like, you hear a lot about this story branding stuff these days, and you story branding certified. And the thing I mostly disagree with the story brand is the story branding pulls the story out of it. And most of the time it almost pivots the client is the hero. And I just don't believe that. I believe that you're the hero. Whatever traumas, whatever triumphs you've had as a human being is going to be a direct benefit to your clients outside of what you know in financial services, but it shows them the driver.
It's the truth. Absolutely the truth. I look back on my life and all the ups and downs that I went through. I did not come from money. And I was trying to be a singer in a rock and roll band. I wasn't trying to be a financial advisor. Right. I was raising my family. And then all of a sudden, my husband invites some insurance agent to the house. I'm like, what the hey did you do that for? I'm not dying anytime soon. I was like, I was clueless. So I grilled that guy like a hot dog. And he fell in love with me. Seriously, not love, but you so belong in this industry because you don't put up with anything. I'm like, you're right about that. So I love when I met you that you saw that and you pushed me to say yes to what you wanted me to, how you wanted me to be authentic. Yep. It was scary. It was a faith walk to trust you because we had branding in place and you're like, Chris, what the hey does that logo even mean? You beat me up. It was wonderful to get beat up by you because you really then pulled out a beautiful picture of who I was and it spoke. So I really appreciate what you did. And this is not about me. So look, you break rules all the time. That's your MO, right? Yes, and you mentioned that your greatest joy is doing that. So what are some of the biggest industry standard rules holding people back besides what we've already just talked about that can really help them break free? Because today's podcast should set many people free.
I appreciate that. And actually, to go back, one of the things that really struck me about you, Chris, was you said things like, I grilled him like a hot dog and what the heck. Like these were pieces of the way that you speak that really spoke to me because it really showed me she doesn't care what I think. She's being who she is because that serves her. And I think for most people, they don't think like that. I think that, what do they want me to do? And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to be more like this. Yeah. So if I look at what I like to call the dying industry traditions of days gone by that were probably put in place like 50, 60 years ago. Like, I think the biggest offender is people want you to be buttoned up and corporate and objective. I don't think people want that in the year 2025. I think they want authenticity and somebody who's striving to do the same things they are in their own life, which is why when you tell your story, they see their journey in your story and something resonates. It's truth in advertising, it's honest marketing, and it's sending a lure out to your ideal client without typecasting them. It's saying, hey, if this lexicon that I'm using, the grilled them like a hot dog and what the hey, which is very like emblematic of who you are, and it's very unorthodox. If this is speaking to you, you need to give me a call because we are in the same tribe. We are like people. And so think, when I look at
that's one of, and you remind me that communication profile that I use every time someone wants to talk to me, I want them to complete a communication profile. It tells me how they process information, how they face risk, how they problem solve, how they manage change. And this MO that is uniquely them, especially if they're married, sometimes one's going in this direction, one's going in that direction. Sometimes they're going similar directions on things. That opens up such a basket of conversation that leads to really, are we going to be able to communicate? Are we the best fit? If yes, hey, let's have a serious conversation and talk about everything in your life that has a dollar sign connected to see if we're really even good for each other. I've had people, when I think about the pain that some people bring to this relationship that I get into with them, and they're willing to expose that pain to me so that we can do whatever we can to fix it, what an honor that is. Come on.
And I love the fact that everything you just talked about has nothing to do with really what you do. You're looking at this isn't something anybody would have ever taught you where it's like, hey, you have to learn their communication because there's some things that might need fixing on the front side that have nothing to do with their financial well-being. Yeah. It's their ability to even make a cohesive decision because their goals are so different. And so when I think of authenticity, I think about people who do that. Like you saw a gap that most people will never see. where I first have to get these people on the same page and communicating effectively and honestly what their needs are before I can even address
Yeah.
fixing the needs.
I think two things about that. I think number one, I think about this client that was referred to me, but before I talk about him and his wife, when you walk into my office, I'm in my home studio right now, but it's not corporate at all. Okay, it's very comfortable, and people comment on that. They're like, "What?" And I'm not wearing a suit. That's just not who I can be. I don't know how to do that. So anyway, this guy gets referred to me. He comes in with his wife, and they're in their mid-50s, and he's making money like crazy, Randall.
Yeah.
And she's spending it like crazy, and so is he. They're really living life and enjoying it. And it was stupid money what they were making. Plus, his business was growing every single month like crazy. And he goes, "The reason I was referred to you is because I heard that I could trust you, number one. But number two, I'm scared. I don't know what we're going to do. I'm spending money like a drunken sailor, and I'm 55. And I got a little savings, but I know it's not going to be enough. Can you fix me?" Can I fix you? So what ended up happening is I always take my financial planning hat off because I want to know at somebody's core, who are you? So he ended up trusting me and telling me. I come to find out that this guy grew up in a house and it was kind of a small town. His father was one of the richest men in town. His mother thought money was evil. But they both loved their kid tremendously, and he loved both of his parents. So he didn't even see that he was living the life that they had groomed him for when he was a child. Make a ton, but don't hang on to it. So we were able to break that off and fix that. So now they're working in a clear head, clear understanding, better pattern, all that good stuff. But the why just makes people relax in their chair, their shoulders drop. It's a beautiful thing.
Absolutely. And it's so crazy that his problems didn't have a lot to do with his financial solution. His problems had everything to do with his own built-in trauma and what he was doing with his money.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't about a tool so much, right? It wasn't about, oh, holy smokes, we got to figure out a way how to grow this. It's like we just got to stop the purge.
Yeah. So that's sometimes amazing. People accuse me of being a therapist. I said, that's why we have Kleenex here. It's okay. Speaking what?
Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
It's funny you say that because anytime you have more than a surface level conversation with a person in the year 2025, you get that accusation seems to come up. Where it's, listen, I'm not interested in surface level conversations. I'm interested in knowing people, knowing people.
Yeah.
And I think in this day and age, it's more important than ever that we make those relationships because we're more connected to more people than we've ever been with social media, digital, email, and our cell phones. But we all feel so disconnected because we have these nonsensical surface conversations, about that we never actually get to know each other.
Yeah, relationship is key. Yeah, key, totally key. And so you talk about relationship. Talk about your relationship. You and Holly wear wedding rings, but you're not legally married yet.
Yeah.
And you said your relationship works because you're not trying to change each other in a world where everyone's trying to optimize and improve their partners. What does that acceptance-based approach teach us about authentic relationships?
For me, Holly is the love of my life. She's the end all be all. She's my soulmate. She's all that stuff. And when early in our relationship, we had a lot of very deep conversations about who we were, what we believed in. And I think that's why our relationship forged the way that it did. And we got to see each other as we were. Mm-hmm. I think speaking authentically, using words for what they mean rather than certified speak, the LinkedIn isms we like to see all the time. I think using words that have meaning and just showing people that you mean what you say when you say those certain words, the communication aspect of it cannot be understated. But also, I know who I am and I know what I'm just not willing to do. And what I'm not willing to do is not be who I am. Yeah. So if I'm in a relationship that is going to force me to not be who I am at my core, I just can't do it. And Holly and I had those conversations early, and she said the same thing about her. Very early, we committed, and we bought wedding rings, and we wear wedding rings because the wedding ring it's a symbol the world can understand for how we feel about each other,
Sure.
without us having to hop through the nonsensical hoops to actually be what the world wants us to be, which is legally married, legally bound, and all that stuff. And we just, yes, for sure, someday we will definitely get married, but it's not going to be on the terms of societal pressure or anything like that. It's going to be between myself and Holly, and it's going to be on our own terms. And that's how we live.
Yeah.
And I think what that can teach us about being authentic is always stay true to yourself, and don't take a step back. If there's a relationship that's not for you, you probably already know it. And I've been in my fair share of those where I did give too much and not too much in a way that was really great on my behalf either, but I sacrificed things about myself that I told myself I never would.
Yeah.
So once I had found that in myself and found the confidence, I wasn't going to give that back up. So I think a big part about being authentic is you have to do the inside work. And for a lot of us, it means therapy. For a lot of us, it means talking to other people. For a lot of us, it means getting to the core of what makes us tick and just being who we are.
Yeah. So you remind me back, so you bring back the whole therapy piece, which reminds me of your recovery experience. And you had some tough times that really were foundationally actually quite good for you on many levels. So you spent some time painting apartments for a while, thinking, I can't do this anymore. What kept you keep moving forward? And what do you tell other people who are in that dark place right now? Maybe they're struggling to really hold on to their own recovery. What do you tell those people?
That's a tough one, because what our motivations, oftentimes we skew ourselves and we look for our motivations on the outside, where, hey, look at that super sneaky businessman and he looks rich and he appears to not be caring about too much. So we set that ideal. And for me, I was always, being a punk rocker, I had a different set of ideas. I had a different way of looking at the world myself and how I fit into that, which I felt like I didn't. So I had to forge the identity from scratch. I couldn't get a pre-subscribed, oh, hey, this is, let's call it standard issue lefty, standard issue righty. I just couldn't fit into those confines. But I was always deeply ingrained with my own work ethic. And I was always, hey, I might never be the best at something, but I can definitely work the hardest. I can work the hardest out of anybody. And so painting those apartments, doing those labor jobs for forever, I always leaned into that. I can do the best job I can possibly do today. And if I work as hard as I can possibly work, it'll probably be, if we put it into a competitive mindset, it'll probably be better than everybody else's because I'm willing to work harder.
And sometimes doing those labor intensive things free up your mind to think about other things. So tell me, what do you do for fun? Because I know you've got some good fun stuff.
For me, I do like to go see punk rock shows still. I do a lot of record shopping. I'm grateful for having a life where I don't have to check my bank account every time I buy a record. Buying a record was like a major purchase. And now I'm grateful to not have to do that. But I find a lot of my happiness comes from the mundane things, my mowing the lawn and weed eating and just taking care of the things that I have and showing gratitude for the things that I have. I feel like taking care of them is a way to express that. And at the same time, give myself a sense of, and maybe this is typecast on my part or a little bit stereotypical, what I think is typically normal. So, and I find a little bit of a little bit of joy in that stuff where it's like, hey, normal people mow their lawn. I should do that and be pretty excited about it. So I do truly find joy in the mundane tasks around my house.
I find doing something physical like that when I need to walk away, it just airs out my brain. And then all of a sudden a great idea will come for a client or whatever project I'm working on. I'm like, oh yeah, thanks.
And it's a different kind of connection, right? Yeah. Where when I'm mowing my lawn, I know that if I run the lawnmower over the lawn, it cuts the grass. These days, our tasks are so abstract where most of the things that I have to do in a day involve getting on some electronic device and sending information to various places.
Yeah.
So even that work itself isn't rooted in the natural world. So these just the natural benefits you get from this blade cuts this grass and you cut the grass and it's like, hey, now it's shorter and it smells amazing. And it's an all immersive kind of deal, right? Where you can smell it, you feel the softness of the new shorter grass, but it's a little bit stiffer than the floppy, terrible grass, right?
Don't tell anybody, but my husband cut the grass yesterday and I laid in the grass. It was amazing. my daughters would be so proud of me. They say, oh, you were grounding, Mom, whatever.
I know, and they have all these crazy words like, oh, you were grounding, or hey, but it's like, yeah, maybe, but I just like it. I'm not going to get that deep about it.
So where's Randall going? What's next? What do you see for yourself?
Well, everything that I've been through and all of definitely the failures in my life, the failures I've seen in myself personally, professionally, and otherwise, I'm in a pretty good spot right now. I think I'm a VP in a company, which I never thought that was possible. There's not a single person I know that would have said, oh yeah, I knew he was going to be a VP there's no way. But I do have a yearning to get back to the roots of brand outside of financial services. I could see myself doing a little startup, a brand company where I take on people like us, people who are authentic, who know that they're trailblazers, who know that they think differently. And I would like to brand those businesses. I would like to get into a different industry, even if it's not a full-time deal where I'm still VP at my current position, but I'm just filling my cup creatively. I do some screen printing from time to time in my garage, and I want to continue to do that. I want to pick that up a little bit and start selling my artist prints and stuff.
Oh, so are these framed prints? Are they shirts? What are you screen printing?
They're paper prints. They're 13 by 19 screen prints, and they're ridiculous. When I told you that I've always had a work ethic, I made these incredibly detailed drawings once upon a time, and I pulled a bunch of screen printers because I didn't really know how to screen print. And I said, is this possible? And they said no. Every single one of them said it wasn't possible. So then I was like, okay, it looks like this is what I'm going to do then. And so I figured out a way to screen print them. And there's so many colors on these prints. I want to say in all, it was a 14 layer screen print. And now it's not a 14 color because I had to break some of the layers up to get all the detail. So I could use, but yeah, I did the work and I printed 239 of these things. It took forever, but they're beautiful. And I love stuff. I love making, like taking nothing and creating something.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
So I find myself doing more of that for sure.
Well, plus you probably got some good muscles now from doing all that.
Well, yeah, I'm trying. I do work out quite a bit. I've picked that up again. I just am finding joy in other things outside of constantly seeking monetary success or accolades or recognition.
There is a story that I forgot to ask you about. Before we close, if you wouldn't mind, when you got your current position, you took a risk because you wanted to test something that you were making. Tell us about that.
So I had taken this interview for this financial services company. And financial services was never an industry I was ever interested in being in. I specifically tried to veer away from it because everything in it, from my vantage point at that time, was terrible. It wasn't creative. It wasn't trailblazing. It wasn't awesome. But I did just get this custom-made print portfolio made in England. And back when I graduated college, print portfolios was what you did. You had a print portfolio, you made it unique, you brought it to every interview, but by the time I had interviewed for this position, and I want to say it was 2021, nobody was bringing print portfolios to interviews anymore, but I'm a throwback. I'm a little bit crazy and on the outside. So I love making stuff like that. And the couple that made it from England, they were just so delightful and wonderful to work with. But I made a print portfolio and I wanted to show it, even though I definitely did not want the job. So I showed the portfolio to gauge a reaction, full well thinking there's no way I'm taking this job. And it was not that different than the out the window thing where I went into that interview saying, you will not be taking this job, Randall. You're going to stay unemployed for another 6 months. Because I was on sabbatical. I wasn't sure that I still wanted, I was burnt out. I wasn't sure if I wanted to continue to do graphic design for a living. Showed my portfolio, everybody loved it. And then at the end of the interview, I just so happened to take the job. And I'm just thinking, even at the time, I'm like, you're not going to take it. You're not going to take it. I was like, oh, sure, I'll take it. But I gave them a caveat. I said, listen, you're not super sold on me. Really, they didn't offer me the kind of money that I felt like I deserved, but I wasn't going to wheel and deal on that front. I took the man's advice from recovery that had served me well. I said, listen, you guys, this really isn't the kind of salary I'm interested in, but you don't know me and I don't know you. You put me on probation for 90 days, I'll put you on probation for 90 days. If this job sucks, I'll quit. And they were like, perfect. So we shook hands on it. And it was one of the greatest moves of my life, because that financial company was unique. It had people like me that were very outside of the box thinkers, very unorthodox, we're the bad news bears of the financial services. And because we don't run this business traditionally corporate, we have different ideas. And with those different ideas, we get different results, and they're better results.
And more importantly, because of your yes, I got to meet you.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks so much for your time today and all this conversation. And thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next time.
Beyond the Numbers podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.